Hello, professionals. My name is Rico Aladdin, and I am the founder of Professional Lunch. Today, we have the founder of Do Good Better Consulting in the studio to talk about nonprofit and fundraising. So, Patrick, welcome to the show.
First of all, I'm grateful to be here. I'm having flashbacks on studio from old college days doing news stuff, and no, I'm really glad. This is a great. It's a great concept for a show.
Okay.
And I love this, and I'm super honored to be here today. This is super fun.
Wonderful. Please tell the Professional Lunch audience who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Patrick Kirby. I'm the founder of Do Good Better. We're a consulting firm that helps nonprofits suck less at fundraising. We help build capacity.
Yes.
That's really, so a lot of nonprofits, a lot of nonprofit leaders are all accidental fundraisers. You're super passionate about a nonprofit. You're super passionate about trying to fix the world and make it a better place. And you're thrown into the fire when it comes to fundraising all the time. Nobody goes to school to get a Bachelor of Arts degree in annual giving or event. Nobody does that. That doesn't exist. And so you just learn trial by fire, or give us a buzz and then we end up helping you out. I've been doing this professionally for about 20 years.
Wow.
I got my first gig as a fundraiser, or like a, sort of a nonprofit alumni guy at my old high school. So I graduated with a politics degree, which meant I was unemployed. And I quickly moved up the ranks there. I went to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. I went to the Anne Carlsen Center, which is this wonderful place out in Jamestown, North Dakota. Yep. And then I decided that I was going to start my own thing. So about 5.5 years ago, I decided to go out on my own and adventure into the world of consulting. And I've been doing it ever since.
Wow, this is wonderful. I really like that because I want to give the student who will be watching this, and the Professional Lunch audience, a window into what you do, because some of them are involved in nonprofits, and hopefully your services may come as helpful as you can imagine for them. So
I'm sure. Well, a lot of people volunteer for a lot of different things. Normally, people give or volunteer or participate in multiple nonprofits, right? You give to your church and school, a couple of the things that you end up really falling in love with. So the number of nonprofits that people are involved with or bump into or associate with there's tons of them. And we live in an area where there are so many nonprofits, so you'll bump into them all the time anyway, regardless if you want to or not. So just learning how to help what's needed. If you end up on a fundraising committee or some sort of event planning committee, it's always nice to know what to do or what they need. And I'm here to be a font of knowledge for anybody who wants to know. So
this is great. Wonderful. So we'll circle back to your company and to your business. But please tell the Professional Lunch audience a little bit about your background.
Sure. Yeah. Kind of boring. Like, I wish I had a super cool backstory. But when I graduated college, I had this politics degree, right? So I grew up in this kind of suburban Minneapolis area. Spent a lot of time in doing theater and sort of this communication type of stuff. So I decided that I was going to run for office. So I actually ran for office down in the Twin Cities back when I was like a 25-year-old. The House of Representatives.
Oh, okay.
Because that's what a 25-year-old is clearly qualified to do right out of college. And I raised more money than I was legally allowed to spend in a race.
Wow.
Which is wonderful if you didn't get your butt kicked in an election. So I'm terrible at politics and ended up being a pretty good fundraiser. And I sort of explored over the last couple of years, like where that fundraising would have come from, right? But I grew up in the Catholic school area, right? So we're always doing fundraisers. We're always trying to raise money. There's always something that we were, selling raffle tickets for. When I was in college, I was part of a fraternity and I was the fundraising person. I never put any of this together until I was actually in the real world and go, this is kind of great. And then we're also sales jobs that turned into the skill sets that you would need to be a fundraiser, right? It's active listening. It's being interested in people, generally curious about others, that allows you to read human beings and see who would be a good fit where. And all of those little skill sets that I had developed over the years turned into being really aligned with raising money, building relationships with donors, and sort of storytelling to make people feel really good about what they were about to do, which is donate.
Wow. This is you have a wonderful story, and I like the fact that you went for this. You kind of stumbled into fundraising, and you were successful at it.
Right.
So because you never know where opportunities are coming from.
Never, not at all. And it's fun to look back on that too, where you're like,
Yeah.
what did I learn as a lesson? Well, I learned that meeting people and asking them, right? So you don't want to skirt around the issue when you're doing fundraising. You want to say, what do you need the money for? I need it for this. So being very clear in your messaging, all this kind of like, all these things you would absorb and not pay attention to are extremely clear when it becomes fundraising as your profession. And it's super fun to kind of connect the dots there.
Wow. Do good better. I mean, the name. Tell me about the name.
Well, it's a fun name. I like when people say, "Are you from the better doing gooder person?" I go, "Yes." It all works out. I used the term "do-gooders" for a long time when we were referring to nonprofit leaders. Hey, we're all a bunch of do-gooders. We're just trying to do good in the world. And when we were trying to come up with a company name, stumbled across when we were saying, I just want to help people do good. And I just want to help them. They already do good work. I just want to help them to do better. And I was like, that could be a thing. And I was like, do good better would make a really kind of fun business name. There's a book called Doing Good Better. It's about altruism in business. And that's kind of a fun little bit. But there wasn't a Do Good Better Consulting. And to the government to put my LLC in, immediately went there. But it's a concept. I'm not trying to go in and fix horrible nonprofits.
Yeah.
They don't exist, right? They're already doing their best. They're already trying to do good. They're always trying to strive. I just want to help you do the little things in a better way so that your good can actually raise money, so you can actually do good work.
Wow. So your company focus mainly on fundraising, yes?
Yeah. So capacity building in the fundraising world for small and medium-sized nonprofits, right? So giant hospitals and academic institutions who have the capacity already to pay for a lot of employees and marketing and all these fundraisers. They don't really need my help.
Yeah.
But those small one-person shops, the all-volunteer board or the community foundations that are trying to build some impact where they live, they're the ones that I just really love. And I love it because when I first got into this, I got asked to mentor a couple of small nonprofits, right? So this is when I was working at a former employer. And they would come up to me, it's like, hey, we just want to talk through some things. So I ended up being like a de facto amateur therapist, but just listening to people's I just don't know what to do with this donor. My board members aren't listening to me, et cetera. And I would dole out what I knew was basic 101 advice. But to them, it was clarity. And they had this light bulb moment turn on in their brain. And I swear it is the most addictive drug I have ever experienced in my entire life, to know that these small little nuggets of advice can be used and they're going to raise more money and they're going to do these amazing things for their nonprofit. And I couldn't get enough of it. Wow. So that was I've just been striving for that. To how can I get into a place where I can give some advice that's very basic and simple and do the small things correctly that makes you a better, fundraiser or marketer or storyteller, something like that.
Wow, wonderful. What do you think the nonprofits? What do you think they should do to be a little more successful when it comes to fundraising?
Oh, that is a very it's a great question. Get niche-y. So I think a lot of nonprofits love to have big, hairy, audacious goals. They want to solve world hunger. They want to clothe everybody. They want to have world peace, right? Yeah. These big, hairy, audacious goals. Niching down to something like, I'm going to solve food scarcity in my neighborhood. I'm going to make homelessness in our town not to go away. Like these manageable small things to then build on. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of nonprofits want to be everyone or everything to everyone. Yeah. And if you're everything to everyone, you're really nothing to anyone, right? So you have to niche down and say, okay, who do you really want to serve? What do you really want to do? And explain that very clearly. I think a lot of nonprofits want to be clever. and they want to have like, hey, I need to stand out in a crowd, so I need to do all these clever things. And clarity over clever every single time will make you a better nonprofit.
Wow, this is wonderful. So, is that what are some of the services that Do Good Better provides in the community?
Well, we do like board training and strategic planning, that kind of stuff. So we'll take a board that really doesn't know what direction they want to go in, or they'll take a mini strategic plan where you don't need a 58-page strategic plan that you'll never use and that'll collect dust on a shelf. You don't need that anymore. Nowadays, if you're forward anything more than 3 years, it's just a waste of time and energy because things change so rapidly, right? Like right now, like a week ago, we didn't have aliens that were like attacking over the United States, and like now we have aliens. Like we didn't have aliens a week and a half ago, and now we've got aliens, right? So like balloons are showing up, and right. So like the nature of the world is changing so rapidly, and AI is changing so rapidly, and technology is changing that strategic planning needs to take into account all these crazy things, and sort of just shortening the time period that you do that, I think is something that I think a lot of nonprofits could use. So we do strategic planning in that case. We do marketing and communication and storytelling, which is kind of super fun to get their story correct and make sure that they know that if somebody says, hey, what do? You got a really good answer for them. If they ask, how can I help? If a donor asks, how can I help? You got a really quick answer for them. And then general consulting, and again, I use it jokingly, therapy, where you just need a place of safety where you can talk about the frustrations about donors or leaders or how to do things. Our nonprofit leaders who are wonderful, they don't have a lot of confidence when it comes to comparing themselves to others, right? So if you're a small nonprofit and you look at these big nonprofits, you're like, oh, I must be doing something wrong. And getting perspective, I think, is really important to keep your fire alive and keep you passionate. One of the things that I'm terribly worried about is burnout in the nonprofit realm. The average term that people will spend in a role as a nonprofit development director is like 18 months. So you don't even have time to build relationships with your donors before you decide that this is not for me and I just can't handle it anymore. And so we really try to do a great job of saying, okay, breathe, you're going to be fine. And a lot of that just takes time and sitting down for a coffee or being over the phone and just saying, you got this. So a lot of it is just having a safe place to discuss ideas, to curate events, and sort of build a nice little place where you feel comfortable doing fundraising or doing your nonprofit work.
What do you think is the hardest part for nonprofit? Is it the burnout, or is it having a hard time accumulating resources for them to function? What do you think?
I think the hardest part for individuals is burnout. It's unreasonable expectations you either put on yourself or that your leadership team puts on you or your board of directors puts on you. Raise $2 billion. I don't know how I'm going to do that. And that you're now thinking about that constantly. I think it is staying on track and remembering that this is a very long game when it comes to fundraising. That if I came up to you and said, I've got a new nonprofit, I would like you to give me $10,000. But I know nothing about you and you know nothing about me, and I assume that you're going to give me money. Well, that's not how this works, right? So how would I get to know you? What questions would I ask you to see if we were even a good fit? And alignment takes a long time. So the hardest thing for nonprofits, I think, is just learning patience, taking small wins as massive wins, right? So like just making sure that you take time to look back and celebrate, make time that you show gratitude for how far you've come, and then reminding yourself why you get up every morning, what big wins that you have, what small wins that you have that sort of collectively make the community better. And I think that challenge of burnout, that challenge of not remembering what you do, it's a major issue in the nonprofit world.
Wow. So how is your relationship with the nonprofits out there?
I would like to think great. I've always said, I always want to be there to pick up the phone or answer a question. I want to be the first line of a first person you call that's like, I got a question about fundraising, I got a question about this. If I don't know the answer, I'll get it for you, or I'll send you in the right direction. But I always want to be there for the nonprofit community as a whole. Whether I can inspire you to go make an ask, whether I can influence you to take it and slow down and appreciate what you do, whether I can encourage a board member to just be a partner rather than someone who's just pointing a finger and say, I need you to do this. I like the idea of being someone that people can connect with, that will get an answer from anytime.
Wow, this is just wonderful. So on that note, we're going to take a short break here. When we come back, we'll talk to Patrick about some of the things that he loves about what he does. We'll be right back. We are back. We are at the Bias and Information Network studio at NDSU. My guest today is Patrick Kirby. Patrick is the founder of Do Good Better Consulting. Welcome back, Patrick.
It's great to be back.
All right, now we get to the part of the conversation where we're going to talk about some of the things that you love about what you do. Can you tell me, I usually ask for 3, but you can tell me 2 or 3.
Like what I love most about this?
Yes.
I am obsessed about the light bulb moment that a nonprofit has when they realize that they can do things. Usually I get a call out of either desperation or curiosity, or I need help doing this, this, and this. And within a very short period of time, they go, oh, okay, it's not as bad as I thought, right?
Yeah.
So that sense of relief, I love more than anything. I love creating content. I love writing, and I love podcasting, and I love creating short videos that people can digest in a very quick amount of time. And the reward for me is not only knowing that I think they're going to get better at what they do, but then I'll get a little note here and there that says, hey, I would love to, thank you very much. It's like a little thank you note, and I'm just obsessed about those. And I think the third thing is I know that I am helping organizations that are the only ones who are going to help some of our social woes in the entire community. The nonprofits are created because the government can't and won't fix some of our social ills. The nonprofits exist to fill the gaps in our community. And I know that I am playing some sort of small part in creating a place that they can do amazing fundraising work that then pays for the programs that make our community better. Or communities that I've never been to, or knowing that there are individuals who I will never meet across the globe that listen to something that I've said or have read about something that I've written and taken that and put into action to do good work. And that's a really cool feeling to have of impact, that even though I will never meet some of them that are doing that.
Wow, this is great. So you mentioned that you love podcasting, and before we start the show today, we were talking about how many episodes that you have done. Please tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I was a broadcasting nerd back in high school and college, and so I was edited the paper, and so I love the journalism and communication piece to my work. But during the COVID days, couldn't go meet for coffee, couldn't go glad hand with anybody, still wanted to spread a message. And I had an extra space in my office that I turned into a podcast studio and decided to start a podcast. Out of the blue, I thought, I'll lift up other nonprofits is kind of how I started it. So I'm going to interview small nonprofits. I'm going to give them a platform they might not have had before. We're going to talk about what great stuff that they do. That'll be a good podcast. It's evolved to, I bring on guests from throughout the country who are experts that are helping small, medium-sized nonprofits understand fundraising and marketing and communications better. And it's been an absolute joy. And I think we're creeping up on our 280th, 290th episode already.
Wow, this is impressive.
It's unbelievable. It's taken off on its own. It's we've got sponsors to the show now, and we've been doing it for so long that we were looking back on all these kind of cool folks who have come through our podcast area. It's remarkable. And it just speaks to the volume of what people want to know. And they just want information, and they want to do good work, and they just don't know where to look. And I think a lot of people get exhausted from trying to Google their way out of a fundraising situation. And I like to give them in 30 minutes or less some sort of answer from somebody who's way smarter than me that I get to facilitate a discussion with. And then poof, we got a couple of answers that I get to use as something that I now learned. I take way more notes with my guests than I normally do in any other situation. I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea. And I just scribble down like, oh, I should mention that later. It's fabulous. Yeah, it's super fun.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I think I can relate to that because conversation in you know, to think about what you just said, it's one of the reasons why I have professional lunch. You know, talking to people who are accomplished, you know, out there. I am hoping, and I know for a fact that a student or another career professional who's watching this is able to take a thing or two, some tips, some tricks that they can use in their own life.
Right.
And that's what this show is about, giving them a window into the careers of accomplished professionals. So please tell us a little bit about some of the milestones that you have had with Do Good Better.
Sure. We've gotten to speak, I don't know, on countless, we probably speak, or I probably do webinars or speak 100 times a year or something along those lines. I mean, we've been invited to speak at conferences that I've never thought I'd be invited to. We've had guests on our podcast I'd never thought who would even consider saying yes. Or we've had speakers at conferences that we've created that said yes, that they would show up. I wrote a book during this, which was kind of a fun deal. I always wanted to write a book, and I did. And then, it's the lesson I've learned. One of the biggest accomplishments that I've learned, I think, is telling myself that it's okay to reach out and ask. I've always thought, I'm like, wow, I should maybe not ask, or I shouldn't do this. And the best guests I've gotten on my shows, the best speakers I've ever gotten to our conferences, have all said yes because I asked. And one of the lessons that I like to tell the nonprofit realm is that you'll never get money unless you ask. People don't, they will always assume you're okay unless you tell them what you need. And it's one of the basics of the basics, right? I exist as a nonprofit. I want to raise money. I'm going to do all this advertising. I'm going to tell my story. And then I'm going to get to the point where I would like you to give me money, and I will just assume you're going to give it to me. And that's not how any of that works. And so what I've learned is asking. You most likely get a yes. If the answer is no, it's probably a no right now more than anything. And if it's a no emphatically, that's a really good thing to take back and say, at least I didn't do my research that we were aligned correctly, or I don't have to waste my time trying to beg that person to come back. I can move on, and I can fill it with other people who are going to fill my bucket, who are going to be aligned well, et cetera. And I think that's a wonderful life lesson for any human being. I think it's a wonderful life lesson that I've learned as a business person to say that, listen, if you say no and you just don't want anything to do with us, great. That I now know where you stand, and I feel like I can fill my time and my space with other people who are really enthusiastic the way that I am. I'm like, oh, good. That makes my life a lot easier. And I think when you're talking to a nonprofit and they get frustrated that there's a no, or they get frustrated that nobody's coming to their events or nobody's coming to their things. Well, did you ask? And did you invite them? More importantly, did you invite them? I think that's another thing too, where we think, hey, I need to please give me $10,000. And you're like, that's not how that works, right? It is, I've got this project. Is that something that you would be interested in helping out with?
Yes.
And that's such a better approach, right? And if you get a yes, awesome. Got a friend for life. If they say no, great.
Yeah, you can move on.
You've moved on, right? Yes. So those are the things that I really have marked that I've learned as a business person that I get to then pass on to the nonprofit world too.
Okay. So how do you suggest that they go about taking the no's and then move on? How do you suggest they do that?
Know that this has nothing to do with you. It's all them. And as a nonprofit leader, or you're involved in a nonprofit, it's not about you. This is not about your need to have. It's about the donor's need to give. Period. Wow. Right? So you want all the money in the world, but it's not about you needing it. It's about, are you setting up that donor or that person or that business to feel really good about their gift? And if that's your first purpose, well, then your alignment is right. They're going to feel good about giving, and they're going to say yes.
Wow.
But if you come at it from like, I want this, or this is mine, or you have a responsibility to do this for me, that's off-putting. It's not aligned well. And frankly, I don't think that that's a good fit for them either.
Yeah.
They're going to feel bad about that gift because it wasn't necessarily like the thing that they wanted to do, and they don't feel great about it. So
Wow. I think I found the clip for the week.
I like it. Yes. Got it.
Yes. We're going to take another short break here. When we come back, we'll talk to Patrick about some of the challenges that he faces in his line of work. We'll be right back. We are back. We are at the Bison Information Network studio at NDSU. My guest today is Patrick Kirby. Patrick is the founder of Do Good Better. Do Good Better Consulting. Welcome back, Patrick.
I'm stoked to still be here.
Yes. Now we get to the point where we're going to talk about some of the challenges. This is my favorite part of the show. I say that all the time, because I believe, especially in the nonprofit world, there are a lot of challenges. So
Yes.
tell me some of the challenges that you see when you talk to businesses. What are some of the challenges they tell you about when you talk to them?
I think the biggest challenge is that, well, I'll do two. One, I'll do a challenge for me personally. I think my challenge is I want to be in front of everyone. So I rarely take my own advice about niching down, and I just want to be everywhere to like spread this message as many times as I possibly can. So I always get like, why didn't 10 million people show up to my webinar? And I was like, I get mad about that. But I think those expectations that I get upset at are also the expectations that the nonprofits get mad about or get upset about or feel challenged by. Why don't I have a 10,000 person mailing list? Why didn't we raise $10 million? Why didn't our gala sell out? Why? So all these like, woe is me, why questions, rather than refocusing to say, look at what we just did and look at how much good we are going to do with this, rather than the what ifs, the hows, and the like, oh man, if only we had these. And I think that's great to have these wonderful, big, hairy, audacious goals, but it's also extremely important. And again, we talked a little bit about this from the burnout standpoint, is that it's so important to remember what you just did so that you can do good with that, tell the story of the impact, and then you grow incrementally. So it's the patience is really a difficulty for nonprofits. Them thinking about what could have been is a really difficult space that they put themselves into. And a lot of it's just self-induced. This is not, I think the challenge to approach businesses in a down economy, that makes sense, but businesses and people still want to give.
Yes.
So it's just finding the right people to align with rather than everybody. And that just takes a little bit of patience and inquiry and being curious and asking questions to make sure that they're the right fit, and then going and chasing them after that.
Wow, this is wonderful. So what do you think that people who start nonprofit get wrong at the beginning?
What do they get wrong? So what do people get wrong about starting a nonprofit? Mostly starting a nonprofit. So if I get this question a lot of like, hey, should I start a nonprofit? My answer is usually, oh, God, please no, don't do that. And the reason I say that is there are so many organizations doing so many good things that your idea of what you want to start is usually probably being done by somebody else, and they would love your expertise and enthusiasm to be poured into that organization to help them do what they're already doing, rather than starting your own nonprofit. A lot of people get wrong that it is a boatload of work to start a nonprofit. You have to have a board, and you have to do reporting to the government, and you have to get approval for this, and then it is a lot of work. And just because you're a nonprofit doesn't mean people are going to care about what you care about. And so that's a very tough conversation to have. So what I usually do is say, okay, what's the thing that you're really into? And let's do some research on other organizations that do something similar or in the same vein. And what about them is missing? And maybe your contribution to that is, I would like to help fundraise for this particular thing within the organization, or I'd love to be on a board or volunteer for this organization so I can help direct some of the programs that I think are missing. Or I'll bring up these missing pieces of programs at these nonprofits that are very aligned with what I wanted to start in the first place, and maybe that's how I can make change. That's my first line of suggestion. Then if those are not done, or there's still a gap, or there's still something unique that hasn't been accomplished yet, well then, now we can have a conversation about starting a nonprofit. But I think a lot of people get it wrong that it's, oh, I just signed some paperwork, I send it to the government, and then poof, I can raise money. And that is not necessarily the case at all.
When you meet with nonprofit, is raising money their number one challenge?
Yes.
Okay.
And then getting their board of directors to be interested in raising money as well. Like those are the two primary issues that I think a lot of them have. And mostly because, again, as I said earlier, everyone's an accidental fundraiser. Everybody thinks they have to do the new cool thing, or they've got to spend their time starting a TikTok channel or something else that has nothing to do with their mission, or they have mission creep. They want to do everything rather than just do the one thing that they're really good at. So fundraising is a major issue because A, they don't know where to start. That's a big issue. Like, where do I start to go raise money? How do I even begin the process of cultivating a list, for example? My answer to that usually is speak as many places as you possibly can. This is something that's a really, really good idea, where you can tell your story to as many people as possible over and over and over again. And then don't change your messaging. As boring as this could be, everyone is just figuring it out or just hearing about it the minute you get bored with it. So you just say that, don't change your marketing strat or your storytelling because nobody's paying attention to your last 4 social posts. Hammer on it, keep going on that whole thing. Because again, you could say the same thing of like, hey, we're trying to do this, or hey, we're accomplishing this. And you might go, oh, I'm tired of just saying that story over and over again. And then now all of a sudden people are finally figuring it out. Oh, that's the sweet spot right there. So I think a lot of people get it wrong, where they're just trying to figure out doing some amazing things differently is not necessarily the best route to go about it. So
yeah, wonderful. So from what you say, what are some of the services that people, how can people benefit from Do Good Better?
Sure. I think a lot of it is confirming what they believe to be true, or having another perspective add to the conversation. So for example, if you're a nonprofit leader, or you're an executive director, and you've got a board, you've got maybe a contentious board, and you know the direction that you want to go, but you might not be able to convey that to your board without some sort of politics coming on, or some sort of some conflict of interest or whatever. We usually step in and go, okay, what can we provide, or how can we move this forward and navigate and almost mediate between board and executive directors, right? I remember distinctly, this is what kind of got me into the consulting role, or like curious about consulting, is when I was at a former job. I said, hey, I don't think we could do this. Like, it was just a fundraising project. And I go, I don't think we're ready to do this. And my boss at the time says, I think you're crazy. Let's bring in a consultant. And then the consultant came in and he goes, I don't think you're ready to do this. And the boss is like, see, I don't think we're ready to do this. And I'm like, I was saying that the whole time. I don't understand why you didn't listen to me. And sometimes you just need that outside perspective or confirmation of what you are doing or saying that then leads you to get the next step forward. And sometimes, I've got 3 kids. And I might tell them to pick up their room maybe 15 times. And they might not listen to me 15 times because it sounds like I'm droning on and on. And then somebody else will suggest, like a babysitter or something else, or my wife will come in and go, you need to clean your room. Oh yeah, I guess we have to. And I go, but I'm saying that the whole time. But it's a different voice, different perspective that might matter. That's where we can come in and benefit the organization a lot. Also, it's curating things. People get in creative ruts all the time, or they don't know what the best practices are, or what is going on in the fundraising world, and we keep our ears and eyes on what people are doing everywhere, so we can give them some good perspective and tips and tricks on what's the best practices that are going on nationally that we can take and bring locally, or vice versa too. So it's just a perspective building thing. That's I think our biggest asset is just being available to talk it out and create together in an environment that's way too caffeinated, as you can tell. And I think that's what makes us unique and different and interesting and fun to work with, frankly.
All right. So now we get the part where we gonna talk about some of the questions that some of the students had.
I like this.
Because the show is about bringing accomplished professionals to talk to them about their stories, their background, so that the students who are watching the show can have a window into their careers. And I find myself repeating that over and over again.
I love it. I love it.
So that they can get that. So the first question is from Owen. Owen is a finance and agriculture major. And he said, how do you stand out as a small nonprofit to raise money in front of the big ones who are already out there?
And that's a great question. How do you stand out in a crowd when the big kids are doing a lot? Well, it's messaging, and it is finding and aligning with the people that will love you the best. The answer is that. Do not try to compete with the big boys and girls. Don't do it. Find your own tribe, and then really who supports you currently. I think a lot of nonprofits get in their heads about we need to find so many more people rather than asking those that love them the most who also would love them. Right? I think we get so attracted or consumed by, I want to get all the other people, that we forget that we've got this wonderful group of supporters who would do anything for you and just want to be asked on how they can help you get there. And so formulating a plan with those that love you the best and saying to them would be, okay, who else would love this mission as much as you do? Who else would be emphatically celebratory of the wins that we've had, or wants to tell the story of our impact the way that you love hearing about it? And then from there, build a list and have them introduce you, and slowly but surely build up a giant machine of people who just want to cheerlead you on and help you raise money. But start with those that love you the most first, instead of reaching for people who might not even care about what you do. And I think you're going to have a lot of success. And that's how you counter this idea that I need to be bigger than everybody else, because you don't. You frankly don't.
Wow, this is good. This is really good.
Good question, Owen.
Now, this one is from Anne. Anne is a communication major. How do new nonprofit encourage people to support them instead of others?
Oh, great. So a new nonprofit. Okay, so let's just take food scarcity nonprofit, right? So let's just talk about food scarcity for a minute. Let's just pretend that's a new nonprofit. I would go, where do the individuals who support food scarcity normally hang out, right? Food banks, churches usually, right? So find a way to tell your story in front of those that typically would be open to hearing your message. If you are about maybe even gender equality or something like that, find groups who would be open to your message, and then speak your truth and speak your mission and vision in front of them, and then acquire names that way. Don't need to go out and sort of cold find, hey bank, I would love to talk to you about food scarcity. And they're like, we have no interest in any of these things. Or you've got a childcare program. You're like, well, I really hate kids. That's probably not a good place to start, right?
Yeah.
So again, it goes back to that, who's aligned with you? I mean, fundraising is easy. Find somebody who's aligned, who has the capacity to give, and ask those people. That's it. That's fundraising 101. If you needed to take anything away from this whole show, there you go. And so find like-minded, aligned individuals and tell your story to as many people as possible. That's how you grow your numbers from the bottom up.
All right. This question is from Emma. Emma is a biology major. And she said, what kind of nonprofit does your organization help with?
Any and all, actually. We do a lot. We're very, we work with a lot of social, developmentally disabled and those kind of groups. We work with a lot of, social enterprise groups. We look community foundations. We're all kind of over the board. I've never found one that I just don't enjoy. So we're kind of a very inclusive sort of group. If you've got a mission that is awesome and you've got a vision and you want to do some fundraising, we're open for business. It's pretty great.
All right. And I have this question is from Kyle. Kyle is a political science and journalism major.
Yes, Kyle. Yes.
Yeah, and he said, biggest reason to start a nonprofit and also biggest reason that nonprofit failed.
Biggest reason to start a nonprofit is if you can find a gap that no other social service or nonprofit is providing. And if you have that idea, if you're one of those unicorns that come up with that idea, that you are just infinitely more wise, start it, because that's going to help, and you will attract people who also see that in a gap. Hardest thing for nonprofits, staying on track and making sure that they have the patience to continue doing what they do without the risk of burnout by sort of scattering your brain and trying to be everything to everyone.
Wow, we thank the students who will give their questions to that.
Awesome.
So now we get to the part where I always ask professionals about advice they have for that student who is watching the show,
Sure.
you know, someone out there who is watching us here. What advice do you have for them that can help them in their own careers?
Be genuinely curious about other people. It's going to help you immensely. This show right here is indicative of how you become successful in business. Right here. Being curious about what others do, and not because you just want to learn something from them or a piece of advice. Be genuinely interested in other people. Dale Carnegie had this thing right 100 years ago, or whenever the heck he wrote that book. It's be genuinely curious about others, be genuinely interested in other people, and you will find wonderful little nuggets of wisdom by just doing that.
Wow, this is great, man. I'm so glad you are on
I'm
this
so
show
glad I was
today.
here too. This is great.
So what does kindness mean to you?
I think kindness means, I think kindness is both truth-telling. It's a combo player. It's a truth-telling, and it's trying to find the good in any particular situation, right? And that maybe involves hard truths, right? I think that's kind. I think clarity is kind. And I think enthusiasm is kind. I think those are the traits that I would define as kind. But I mean, sometimes truth hurts,
Yeah.
and it's kind to let people know that, hey, you know what, this isn't working for me, or hey, this isn't a thing. Totally kind. Clarity is kind because it lesses, you know, if it's confusing, you're just going to make people like, I don't understand. And just being enthusiastic is a pretty great quality to have, and that is as kind as possible, because you know that people are trying their best all the time. It may not be working out for them, but at least you are enthusiastic about whatever they're going to go ahead and do.
Well, so I know we have time is not on our side here. So quickly tell me of a time that, you know, your job or your position now, you have had an opportunity to be kind to others.
I think just by picking up the phone and knowing that I don't know if anyone can afford our services or who even need our services. I think there's a case of kindness where I directed them to somebody else who's going to be way better instead of just sort of viewing it as an opportunity for a paycheck for our company. You're going to be way better doing this with this other person. I think that's kindness number one. I think kindness number two is just picking up the phone and listening. I'm horrible at this at home, but I try to be this great in the office, which is just listening and keeping my ears open just to see if I can connect the dots with somebody else or connect the dots and give some sort of good piece of advice that they can take and do. And I try to do that every chance I get completely.
Wow. Patrick, it's so nice to have you on the show today. I have some great laughs and we have some great conversation. I'm hoping I'm going to leave the door open for you to come on back and talk to us again because because I like talking to you. You know, I love your energy and everything. So it's really a pleasure to have you on the show. Any last words you want to tell the professional lunch audience?
Yes. First of all, thank you for having me on your show. This is a complete honor and this is awesome. Keep up the good work. Look at how many episodes you've done. This is pretty. This is pretty crazy. I would leave, if you're curious about the nonprofit world, I would encourage you to give as much as possible to as many groups as possible to find the ones that you love. And it doesn't mean money, right? It means time, talent, or treasure. So give of your time to see if it's something that you really like to do. I know nonprofits appreciate it. I know that they love testing, you know, their communications on it. So get on those mailing lists and let them email you things and be hyper aware that your presence in this world is awesome and your volunteering is awesome and your money is appreciated, but your enthusiasm to helping nonprofits in your own community is great. Test the waters. It's like acceptable to date a whole bunch of other nonprofits, so feel free to date around. It's okay, and it'll be appreciated by others because your time is valuable and your money is valuable, but your enthusiasm to find something to really latch onto and to love is going to make you happier. It's going to make the community better, and the nonprofits are going to love it too. So,
Oh, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. Thank you again, Patrick, for being on the show.